All right. Well, I used to work in sales, and they used to say that do a demo, lose a sale, and that seems what's happening here because I am unable to invite Nelly. Oh, there she is. I spoke too soon, Nelly. I hope you're on, or else I'm gonna have to do some stand up here and kill some time.
Hello,
Hey, there you are, lifesaver.
here I am.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I just want to say thanks to everybody for jumping on. Thanks for waiting the extra minutes while we got this figured out. I just couldn't find you, Nelly. And then I was looking at Twitter and it said I couldn't invite you, but for some reason, or somehow you got invited on. So let's start the Twitter space if you're ready.
Yeah,
Awesome. So just want to say hi to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for jumping on to our very special Twitter Spaces hosted by iExec. I'm here with Nelly, who is the head of adoption. But before I do that, I should probably introduce myself. My name is Rafal, and I am the community manager for North America at iExec. And like I said, I'm here with Nelly, who's the head of adoption. She's very passionate about technology and inclusion. In her free time, she's on the panel for the World Summit Awards, and that's a competition between 187 countries. The aim of this organization is to reward technology that supports the United Nations with their sustainable development goals, which is a very great ambition. She's also a mentor to the companies pitching to the World Summit Awards. So not only is she on the panel, but she's also a mentor. And then she's working as she's part of a working group that establishes cybersecurity guidelines for small and medium enterprises at the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity. So Nelly, extremely impressive resume. Thank you so much for being here.
hi Raval. Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm ready.
I'm still drinking coffee here. It's pretty early here in California, so I just wanted to say thanks for jumping on, and we wanted to focus on crypto trends with this Twitter space. We all know that crypto moves really quickly, and if you're anything like me, it can be so easy to become overwhelmed with all the different protocols, projects, techniques, coins that you can use to make money in the space. And it feels impossible to keep up with all the trends. Today, we'll be reviewing the Paris Blockchain Week Summit Trend Report to get everyone up to speed. And this is a huge report, right? This report analyzes over 300 speakers that share their vision and knowledge. There's more than 140 sessions, keynotes, fireside chats, and interviews. iExec was actually part of the Paris Blockchain Week in 2022, and we will be there next year. But like I said, this report's over 80 pages, and it would take a long time to read all this. Nelly was kind enough to go through this and summarize the trends for us. So she's done all the hard work. All we have to do is listen. And Nelly, you can talk about the trends and let everyone know how you see them evolving over the course of time.
Sure. So I'm really happy, to help our community and, anyone out there to know more about Web3 and the future. So for me, this report is just a good way to better understand two things. The first one is what trends are shaping Web3 and what are the new drivers of adoption. Before we start, quick disclaimer. In Web3, crypto things evolve pretty fast. So we're going to talk about this report in the context of when it was created. So also, this conversation is just for informational purposes. We don't endorse any of the products or services discussed, and we of course recommend you to read the full report. But don't worry, if you don't have time to read it, we're going to give you all the juicy details today.
Yeah, I think that's worth noting. It's always wise to DYOR, do your own research. So thanks for that disclaimer. And it's also worth noting that this is part one of a part two Twitter space. So there are a lot of different trends that we're going to be going over. It would be impossible to cover all the trends in one short Twitter space. So we'll be breaking this up and hosting another Twitter space at the end of the month. But more on that at the end of this session. So, all right. Let's dive in this Twitter space. We're covering the first four trends of the report. The first one, crypto exchanges are becoming new banks. The second one, a permissionless culture in search of organization. We'll be talking about communities, DAOs, talent hiring. The third trend is the need to protect the end user. We'll be talking about regulations, scams, and security issues. And the fourth trend is crypto payments and the domino effect that they're bringing. So trend number one, crypto exchanges are becoming the new banks. Nelly, can you talk about this trend and get into a little bit more of how exactly are crypto exchanges becoming the new banks?
Well, this could be explained by two things. The first one is that exchanges are using blockchain to transform every traditional financial service. This could be borrowing, lending, making payments, and even access to conventional financial markets, like stocks, through tokenization. But also, the second reason is that exchanges are acting more and more like banks. I mean, through venture capital activities, for example, from the top 10 exchanges, all of them have VC activities. So we see definitely a trend here. And another example is one of the most active in 2021 was Coinbase Venture with 67 investments.
That's that's extremely heavy, and those are very impressive numbers. I, I honestly, I didn't see crypto exchanges becoming the new banks when Coinbase and Binance were launched. I didn't see them entering into the traditional finance world of borrowing, lending, and making payments, but I guess it was inevitable. So, what is your takeaway from all this?
I think of three main things. So, crypto exchanges and their investments will definitely have a strong influence of the development of the space. Then we have to keep in mind that these exchanges are among the fastest growing startups in the world, which is super impressive, seeing that one of them was valued at 300 billion and another had a growth of 1,500% of its user base in 2021, which is pretty remarkable. And then I would say, like, one of the a clear indicator of the impact these exchanges can have is their trading volume, which was about 14 trillion in 2021. So, we saw NFTs, meme coins, DAOs, protocols grow in adoption during the last bull run. But ahead of adoption, I think we're going to see this 14 trillion grow as more blockchain technology is developed and adopted.
Yeah, those are really really impressive numbers. A valuation of 300 billion, uh, trading volume at 14 trillion, and so like we think of exchanges as just ways for users to exchange their fiat into crypto or maybe to trade, but these are becoming financial powerhouses. Great. So let's talk about the second trend, which is people, specifically a permissionless culture looking for organization. We can talk about how people naturally organize in the communities. I think this is hardwired into people. We used to gather around fires and tell stories, and now people gather around sports. They gather around music. Some even gather around political parties, but that's a topic for another day. And we know communities are especially important for the blockchain space, which leads me to my next question. Should communities be seen as clients or contributors?
Well, I think in Web3, they expect to be both clients and contributors, definitely.
Okay. So that's also really interesting because we don't typically think of any Web2 stockholder creating memes, with the exception of GameStop. So why should we look at a community as both a client and a contributor?
Well, Web2 is very different from Web3, for example. In Web3, Web3 is investing in people. And beyond the founders, everything is about the community around the project. Why? Because the quality and the size of the community is becoming a KPI. And, more often than not, there's a financial relationship between the project and the community. And this is because the community will benefit from the success of the company, which is very different from Web2. You could
Mhm.
be a client for years, but that doesn't mean that you will benefit from the success of the company.
Right.
And also something important here is that the more engaged the contributors are, the most likely the project is to succeed.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and especially with this idea of engagement, right? We talk about engagement, and you made mention of how the size and the quality of the community is becoming a KPI. These seem to be different metrics that we would normally measure, right? We don't really measure communities in Web 2, and so can you talk a little bit more about engagement? What does that look like?
Well, it can take different forms according each project could be like building, participating, talking to each other. It can take different forms. For example, iExec engagement is a result of empowering our communities to create. How? By recognizing and also rewarding contributions. I mean, for example, we have the developer rewards program where we offer bounties on Gitcoin and also grants for startups and other more ambitious projects. But also the important is to recognize and reward non-technical people, so the community is broader. So we do this through the community rewards program and also the ambassador program, which one thing or two, I think.
Yeah, I could definitely say something about the community rewards program and the ambassador program at iExec. Um, I think it's important to reward non-technical people. As a non-technical person myself, I wanted to get involved in Web 3, but sometimes it can be disheartening seeing jobs that are only available in which you need to know code, you need to know Solidity, you need to know Rust. And so, as somebody who has a certain set of skills, or at least I think I do, how do I take those skills and apply them to a project? And so that was a question that we at iExec raised when we saw that people were spreading awareness of iExec. They were creating these memes and GIFs. They labeled us as digital oil. Sorry, I live next to the train, and the train just wanted to say hi. So they branded us as digital oil, and we listen, right? And I think this is the cool thing about these programs is there's a feedback mechanism that the team does something and the community listens, and then the community does something and then the team listens, and then you have this balance between these two different parties, and the lines become blurred. So we began this program, the community rewards program, to reward people for spreading awareness of iExec. And then we saw that there were regular, consistent contributors that went far above and beyond the normal requirements of community rewards. So we evolved that program, and we turned that into an ambassador program. Now, this is something that a lot of top projects are doing, and so we're happy to join their ranks. But I think it's really important to use your community as a way to nurture talent and attract it. So that's another thing that this report had to deal with. It's this idea of talent attraction and retention. Can you tell us a little bit more about attracting and retaining talent in crypto?
Yeah, so the thing about this trend is, it's very simple. Growing a market requires talent. And that's what we're seeing today. Web3 companies are hiring very aggressively. It could be from offering a 100K referral bonus for engineers to incentivize users to submit CVs on an NFT marketplace. So that's something that the trends that we're seeing today. And also, not that new, tech roles are still the most searched for. But the good thing, and what I'm very excited about, is that content and marketing roles are catching up. Why? Because in Web3, there's a huge need of onboarding and education. I find this trend very refreshing because, I believe in innovation and inclusion. And my journey into a blockchain started with a project related to education and inclusion. And for me, this need of content and marketing roles will not open just doors for new collaborations, but also will create a more diverse and inclusive space.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are looking for diversity and inclusion. And Web 3 is tough, right? Look, the reason why we're hosting this Twitter space is because there's so much going on, and we're all helping each other. We all want to educate. Everybody brings something to the table. But going back to that 100K referral bonus, that only confirms that I should have studied computer science instead of biology. All right. Well,
Yeah.
we'll talk about that at a different time. there's a quote here that I thought was really interesting, and it said that DAOs are HR operating in hard mode, HR being human resources. Can you talk a little bit more about the challenges that DAOs are facing when it comes to attracting and retaining people?
Well, the thing with DAOs is that they are still in an infancy stage, so that could create uncertainty around them. And also, another challenge is that it's very easy to join, but also very easy to leave a DAO. So that is why HR it's becoming key nowadays. So just some advice in the report. They said that the top priorities for DAOs today should be three things. Defining roles, responsibilities, and compensation. Just because, to be able to survive in the long term and help retain their contributors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can totally relate to this idea of DAOs in their infancy stages, especially this idea of it being very easy to join a DAO, but also very easy to leave a DAO. I think that's one of the advantages of having this kind of mechanism. You find a DAO that fits your goals, and if you can navigate through Discord and find the right channel, you can join that DAO and become an immediate contributor, and then also get paid for your contributions. But there's a certain level of stickiness that really isn't there. I mean, you could leave at any point. So how do you make sure that the people who are your top contributors have an incentive to stay? How do you continue to onboard them and educate them and incentivize them to work on these projects and to further advance the goals of the DAO? All right, let's move on to trend 3, which is all about protecting the end user. And I know that this is something that we've heard a lot about from in our Twitter space, or excuse me, on Twitter, on the news. This idea of protection. We need to protect the customer. We need to protect the end user. How do you navigate security? What regulations are needed? And what are we going to do with all these scams? So, can you tell us a little bit more about the trends as they relate to regulation?
Sure. Well, regulation was definitely one of the most discussed topics. And when talking about this, the discussions were around how we can prevent money laundering, how can we protect the consumers, how can we ensure compliance and stability. But also the question was why regulation is beneficial. So the answer was because well-defined regulation can trigger new capital flow, in this case, from more institutional investors. Now, the challenge is, understand the market and regulate it, but while preserving the disruptive nature, which, is not easy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's that balance, right, between regulation and disruption. If we have regulation, then the traditional markets can come in, and they know they're not entering a scam. They know that they can trust a certain type of protocol, but if we constrict the technology too much, it's not going to be disruptive. And so,
Mhm.
what can we do to find that balance between making sure that we're protecting customers, but also allowing these builders to build? And so, how do you, like, in your opinion, how do you encourage innovation while protecting investors?
Well, some interesting trend related to regulation is the local hubs. So local hubs are just a competition between countries to develop the best environments for Web3. And how they can do it is by offering four things. First one, smart regulation. Second, good capital. Third, infrastructure. And the third one, talent training. And I remember during the event, I was there when Binance announced that they will invest 100 million in Station F, one of the biggest startup incubators in Europe.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible that Binance is investing in France, and hopefully some of that 100 million can trickle down to Lyon. Uh, So it seems like regulation is a good thing, at least according to this report. What about cybersecurity? What is a bigger problem in the crypto space? Is it money laundering or is it scammers?
Well, I do love cyber. I do love this topic. And for me, to be honest, this was one of the most valuable insights from the event. So, Caroline Malcolm from Chainalysis, she said, and I quote, only 0.15% of the network activity is linked to illicit operations. And from those illicit operations, half of them were scams. So, this means that in terms of illicit operations, scams are more common than activities linked to money laundering, dark markets, and terrorist financing.
All right. Well, so you heard it here first. You can't believe all the stuff that you read on mainstream news. You can tell your parents that crypto isn't just for money laundering because the data here proves it.
Yeah, exactly. And that is why information and education, and well, in this case, data, it's so important because it helps demystify the idea that blockchain is a technology empowering bad behavior, but
Mhm.
also it helps us to better understand what is actually happening in the space.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that if we look at blockchain as a tool can be used to for good or for bad. So it's not just blockchain being something that empowers bad behavior, to your point, but it's something that we can use for the good of humanity. So the real problem, it sounds like, are scams. Can you talk about exactly how bad these scams are?
Well, they're bad. But they're bad. But the thing is not only Web3; it's everywhere. That's one of the reasons I joined Enisa. To help SMEs in Europe face this kind of challenges. And back to Web3, the real problem, is hacking and scams. To give you an idea of the impact, is in 2021, more than $9 billion were lost in DeFi, due to hacking and scams. Also in 2021, there were more than 200 blockchain hacks. Here also an interesting trend is that bridges are becoming a popular target, like the running bridge hack we know, with Axie Infinity game.
Yeah.
And one of the other things to take into account is that one of the most common DeFi vulnerabilities are like admin key compromise, like the Axie Infinity. Also the rug pull, economic exploit, flash loans, and also coding flaws, like the one with the Poly network with more than I think it was 600 million stolen. One of the biggest in DeFi.
Yeah, that always blows my mind. This idea of $600 million being stolen. That's like the one of the, if not the biggest heist in history. And I always go to this idea of making a movie about it. So if Brad Pitt's out there, I have a story. Maybe we could do Oceans 14, 15, and 16. Slide into my DMs. But I think these are really good points, right? I think these are, we talk about crypto being the Wild West, and as we move from the Wild West to the next stage, we also have to be aware of these kinds of scams, of
Mhm.
different rug pulls and different exploits and coding flaws. And so, if these are the biggest problems, if hacks and scams are something that we have to do something about, what can we do about them?
Well, the report, well, no, is not all bad. The report, suggests that there are still things we can do, right? So one of them would be smart contract auditing. Also, user empowerment in the sense of giving users more tools to assess risk, to
Hmm.
audit protocols, and just to protect their funds. Also, cybersecurity measures, especially in cross-chain environments, are the suggestion. Why? Because when liquidity is connected, the risk becomes exponential.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And then I know that we are coming to the bottom half of the hour, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Trend four, crypto payments, the domino effect. We It sounds like crypto payments are the most mature use case, but they haven't taken off yet. Why?
Yeah, I know that's crazy, right? Electronic money has been around since the 70s when banks started using computer systems. The thing is, like, there is still a lack of regulation and infrastructure. For example, in some online banks today, you can withdraw crypto but not receive crypto due to compliance and legal reasons. On the other hand, also, not everything is bad. There's been some progress. For example, in countries like Africa, El Salvador, Ukraine, in Africa, paying by card is a struggle. So crypto is becoming very popular. El Salvador accepting Bitcoin as legal tender. It could be useful for people abroad, sending money to their families, help in case of natural disasters, or, for example, war, like Ukraine, where they created the first governmental crypto fund in history, among other examples.
Yeah, I find it really interesting that these are the countries that are really leading the charge. Obviously, El Salvador has been all over the news with their decision to accept Bitcoin as legal tender. In Africa, paying by card is a struggle. So, crypto is one of those tools that people are starting to use. And with the situation in the Ukraine, I think that they started looking at different ways to raise money, and so I personally look at this as a country incorporating this technology into their infrastructure. How do we start utilizing this um, to address some of the challenges of our time? And in the report states that crypto payments are just the tip of the iceberg. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's just because crypto payments not that simple. It also implies crypto accounting, crypto treasury, monitoring addresses, monitoring wallets, and this is a complex system. But the good thing in terms of adoption is that instant peer-to-peer payments is the easiest way for people to explore blockchain and understand crypto, compared to trading, for example.
Perfect, perfect. And then in terms of uh, these numbers, right? Can you talk a little bit more about like the payment market in
Yeah,
terms?
well, it's a huge market. I think it was about like 2 trillion in revenue per year. So this offers a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, yeah. I think to me, when you and I were going through this report, I think one of the things that stuck with me was just these numbers. They're gigantic, right? We were talking about 14 trillion in trading volume and payments that generate 2 trillion in revenue each year. I mean, these are gigantic numbers. And you talked about money, electronic money being around for a few decades, but it really hasn't really taken off in the way that people might have anticipated. My personal opinion is that it's because a lot of this is due to the fact that these markets are huge, and it's a giant market that crypto is trying to enter into and disrupt, which is a perfect segue for our final topic, and that's CBDCs and stablecoins, something that was really frequently discussed during the report. Can you tell us a little bit more about these two things?
Well, in terms of stablecoins, the report talks about four main types of stablecoins. The one backed by crypto, those using algorithmic burn and mint, the ones backed by fiat, and the ones backed by a commodity, like a precious metal. So when we talk about stablecoins, something to keep in mind is also the size of the market. I think it's around 180 billions, the market cap. So that gives us an idea of the impact they can have. Now, okay, huge market, right? So the problem is that some stable coins are creating risks and impacting the whole market. Why?
Oh,
Because their reserves haven't been fully audited. Now, here is where CBDCs come into play. Why? Because they could create more confidence in the market. And also, there's also something that we have to keep in mind is that each central bank has its own goals and objectives. For example, China is looking for financial inclusion and reducing cash payments, while the European Central Bank is looking to modernize payments. Why is this important? Is because as CBDCs are developing, I think interoperability will be something to stay focused on.
awesome. So that concludes our Twitter space. Nelly, thank you so much for taking your evening to talk about these trends. I learned a lot, and I'm sure the audience did too. To summarize, crypto exchanges are the new banks, or they're acting like the new banks. There's a permissionless culture that's looking for an optimal way to organize. There's different ways that we need to protect the end user, and crypto payments is a summary, and the fact that they're just the tip of the iceberg. And I would be remiss if I didn't extend an invitation to part 2 of this Twitter space happening on August 23rd, where Nelly will be discussing the CeFi DeFi continuum. The future will be cross-chain, NFTs, the quest for utility, and big hopes for gaming. The wonderful and talented and handsome Blair will be your host, and he did pay me to say that. But I actually have one more thing that I need to say, and that is happy early birthday, Nelly.
Oh,
I know you're
thank
celebrating your
you.
birthday, and so I just wanted to call that out and put you on the spot. So thanks everybody for joining. I hope this was useful and that you have a better idea of the trends shaping Web3. We'll see you in the next episode.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. I hope this was useful and that you have a better idea now of the trends shaping Web3. So, see you in the next episode. Bye bye.
Bye bye.